Hello and welcome to the final round of Stage 1 here on Day 2 at the World Magic Cup. I'm Tim Willoughby, joined by Simon Gertzen, and we've heard it referred to as a David and Goliath matchup, but Macedonia against Canada, it's not going to matter who's got the pedigree, only one team is going to advance out of this stage. Let's head down to the feature match area and check out this match. Hello and welcome to this round 4 here on Day 2 at the World Magic Cup, the last round of Stage 1, and we have Team Canada, one of the more powerful teams in the competition. There we can see Jacob Wilson. He is going to be up against, on the other side of the table, Ivo Neskovic. There you see him. Macedonia against Canada. Canada has a lot of Pro Tour experience. Jacob Wilson has been in the finals of a modern Pro Tour. Modern is the format for this round. Ivo Neskovic, maybe not quite as much experience on paper, but actually Macedonia, they had a great top 32 finish last year at the World Magic Cup, and 2 out of 4 of their team, Miro Popov and Martin Nanik, were there last time too, so it's not out of the realms of possibility they might run something up again here. Inquisition of Kozilek, though, meaning that the Abzan deck of Jacob Wilson gets to see exactly what's going on with Dredge on the other side of the table. Now, looking at this hand, obviously one of these cards is going to go, but how does this one square up for Dredge?
This looks really nice with Faithless Looting and Cathartic Reunion. There isn't a big Dredge payoff card yet, but those cards will generally be allow you to find one.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the Dredge deck's looking to do early, right? It wants to be drawing cards, or I guess by proxy, dredging cards.
The important thing here is that you're not really that much in a hurry against Abzan. The clock that they will present is not one that is designed to kill you on turn 4 or 5.
So Ivo Neskovic picking up a stomping ground there, that meaning that he's going to have access to all of the mana that he needs for colors of mana in this game relatively easily. Blood Crypt also going on. Jacob Wilson looks like he might have another Inquisition of Kozilek for the next turn, which would explain why he took a 1-drop that time around. So here comes Faithless Looting. And it looks like he did pick up a Stinkweed Imp, so plenty of dredgers in the graveyard there for Neskovic. A nice pickup there off his first extra draw of the game.
Yes, that's a big deal. And now that Cathartic Reunion will hit the graveyard, he doesn't have that explosiveness that Dredge is feared for.
Yeah, we referred to it last round as slow dredging, when the only dredging that you get to do is from your regular draw for the turn. And that looks to be kind of the run of things for Ivo Neskovic in the next turn or two.
In this particular case, you do get to flashback Faithless Looting once you start hitting 3 lands. So it's a little faster.
5 cards going to the graveyard in order to get back that Stinkweed Imp. Another Stinkweed Imp going to the graveyard, so the Dredge train still very much running. There we see the Imp. Reprinted in Modern Masters, but originally came out with the Dredge mechanic in Ravnica. Scalding Tarn the play there for Neskovic. Immediately cracking it to find another land. And Life from the Loam, not a card that we have necessarily seen in Dredge decks in other formats and other times, but a big piece of the puzzle in this modern format.
I think it's super important because you don't want to rely on your hand to get you there. You want to fill up your graveyard, but getting from 2 to 3 mana, maybe even to 5 mana, is only possible if you have Life from the Loam, because your draw steps will not yield lands normally.
And of course, with Conflagrate in the deck, being able to play one card that gets many cards into your hand easily then means that your Conflagrates are that much more potent if they need to be.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So in the early stages of this game, not too surprising to see lots and lots of action for Neskovic. His turn's taking a little bit longer than what we've got going from Jacob Wilson. But as the game progresses, what's Jacob Wilson's big path to victory here?
It's really, really difficult. He has successfully stopped Neskovic from going off extremely quickly, but still, he will play a classical mid-range game of disruption, creatures, maybe a Liliana of the Veil, but ultimately, racing Dredge is just a really tough task.
Yeah, sometimes we refer to in Modern the idea of fair decks and unfair decks, and this feels like a pretty clear case of, on the left side of our screen, we have a deck that's doing things pretty by the book. On the other side of things, though, well, Dredge, anything but fair.
Yeah, something I would like to see is a Grimflayer, for example, to give Jacob Wilson the card selection that he needs. And ultimately, he probably needs a Scavenging Ooze, of which he only plays one, in the main deck, to have at least something to interact with the graveyard.
Well, Engineered Explosives on 2 comes down. Now, why is 2 an important number in this matchup?
2 will get rid of Narcomoebas and Bloodghasts. Narcomoebas, of course, don't come back from the graveyard. Bloodghasts do. And Jacob does not have the time or the luxury to go up to 3 to deal with Priced Amalgams.
Path to Exile in hand may also be kind of useful in this matchup, I guess. Being able to exile things much preferable to sending them to the graveyard. It looks like this particular build of Dredge not as worried about getting lots of black mana. So far, just red and green mana available to Neskovic. Plenty more Dredges coming. And there's the first Narcomoeba. Alright, now we're starting to hit action going to the graveyard. A big second Dredge there. Prized Amalgam, a couple of copies of Bloodghast, and 2 Narcomoebas going to the graveyard over the course of that set of Dredges. And so as soon as these Narcomoebas come in, they trigger Prized Amalgam. At the end of turn, that will come into play tapped. And suddenly the Dredge deck actually has a little bit of velocity in terms of creatures coming into play.
Yeah, this was huge. And Jacob does get rid of the Narcomoebas. Narcomoeba is one of the few cards in this Dredge deck that don't really provide something recurring. Once your Narcomoebas are dead, they generally stay dead. So that's a resource that Evo doesn't have excessive amounts of, but Bloodghast provides a very similar effect when it comes to returning Prized Amalgam from the graveyard.
Yeah, this it's a very interesting deck that it can potentially end up with lots of cards in hand thanks to Life Than Loam and similar, but also all those cards in the graveyard, it's like a second hand much of the time.
If I see this correctly, Evo has more lands, more creatures, more cards in hand, and more cards in the graveyard than Jacob.
Yeah, pretty much any metric by which you want to figure out which deck is winning on the Macedonian side of the table is being ticked off here. Path to Exile and Prized Amalgam, certainly a valuable play, but a lot of work to be done for Jacob Wilson here, who also appears to be a little bit light on land. So Faithless Looting leading to even more cards going to the graveyard. 2 copies of Golgari Grave Troll being dredged here. And 3 Prized Amalgam in the graveyard now. They will all be coming back at end of turn as Narcomoeba gets put into play as it got hit on a dredge. There's also a Conflagrate going on. So many different angles of attack here for the Macedonian player on dredge.
And almost no way for Jacob to play around it. He can get rid of 3 Narcomoebas, but he will face 9 points of power the next turn.
Yeah, rather than just sweeping 3 Narcomoebas on the table, Jacob Wilson sweeps up his cards and says, let's go on to a game 2. That a relatively straightforward win for Team Macedonia in what is an elimination match here. One of these teams will advance out of this stage. The other one will have to watch from the bleachers for the rest of this weekend. We will have plenty more Magic for you for the rest of this round soon enough. But first, these messages.
Looking for a place to try out new decks and strategies? Head to your local game store and check out Friday Night Magic. Get more info at wizards.com/FNM.
Optimism, innovation, and the spirit of creativity fill these pages, lavishly illustrated with the award-winning art of Magic the Gathering. Welcome to Kaladesh, a vibrant, beautiful plane where anything is possible. Join the heroic planeswalkers of the Gatewatch as they explore the Inventor's Sphere, and let your imagination soar alongside thopters and airships, crafted by the best artificers in the multiverse.
Hello and welcome back to our feature match area. We have our round 4 match between Canada and Macedonia here, and an elimination match, and we're going to get a chance to jump across and see this man, Alexander Hayne, Pro Tour champion with Infect, up against Miro Popov of Macedonia. Popov, the captain of his team, on a mulligan to 5 here in what is an Infect mirror. Now, Simon, what are the key cards in the mirror that he'll be looking to find in a 5-card hand?
He wants to win rather quickly so that his card disadvantage doesn't even begin to matter. And that means just coming out ahead on the play, Glistener Elf, Blighted Agent, and then, of course, as many pump spells as possible.
Yeah, already a game down. He is going to need to lean on his opening draw pretty hard. It looks like he's managed to find himself some Infectors and lands to cast them. Not necessarily a huge amount in the way of pump spells to begin with. Have to hope that they're on top of his deck. So Alexander Hayne was the first player to actually take a game here in this match, in this matchup in total. Not necessarily a big surprise to see Infect decks winning the game quickly, and Gitaxian Probe means he's going to be working with perfect information. 1 Vines of Vastwood, 1 Glistener Elf, 2 copies of Blighted Agent. Blighted Agent seems like it's potentially kind of a good one here. Being able to get through completely unimpeded, pretty important.
Absolutely. Glistener Elf is also a good card. Mirror, in a sense, has too many Infect creatures. The reason why he didn't cast one on turn 1 was that he didn't want to shuffle his library after the scry. Apart from the obvious cards like Spell's Guide and Twisted Image that are obviously great in this matchup, a card like Vines of Vastwood is not only good at protecting your own cards, but you can also use it as a kind of counter spell for your opponent's pump spells. So that's a card to pay very, very close attention to in the mirror.
It looks like in terms of copies of Twisted Image, those are only available to Macedonia. No copies available to Alexander Hayne in his entire 75. But equally, Spellskite is not a card that there are as many copies of as there could be. 3 coming in for Alexander Hayne, 2 in the main for Miro Popov. A little bit of variation in these lists.
Miro Popov is actually better prepared for the mirror when you look at his main deck. He is the only one with Spellskites and Twisted Images, but apparently that was not enough to beat Alexander Hayne before sideboards.
Yeah, Twisted Image important because it's a card that can very straightforwardly kill off a Spellskite without it costing you any cards, because you get to draw a card at the point that you play it.
Killing a Noble Hierarch with it is also extremely good.
As things stand, though, that Noble Hierarch from Alexander Hayne is just hanging out there, and we've heard that there's been an update from one of our other games. Macedonia has been able to pick up the first game in the middle. Abzan for Martin Nanik taking down Brian Su in the first game. Su on Titan Shift.
That's a little bit of an upset. In general, Valakut decks are really good against Jandor Abzan builds.
We got a little chance to see, as Alexander Hayne was looking for a land there, that yes, he does have Spellskites available to him after sideboard. There's definitely the cards to bring in. One of the most impactful cards in this matchup in total.
If you take a look at what Hayne is working with, he has a lot of mana now, thanks to the Noble Hierarch, and he has a nice mix of Infect creatures and spells.
Now, Blossoming Defense, one of the newer additions to Infect. How much difference does it make the fact that there are now so many ways for Infect decks to give their creatures hexproof?
It just changes the dynamic of a lot of games. If you play against decks that used to rely on a lot of removal, now they have to not only be afraid that you will be able to counter it very mana efficiently, but you also give +2/+2 at the same time. And that makes a big difference. I don't think it'll end up as a 4-off in those Infect lists. It seems to be somewhere between 2 and 3 at the current stage of the metagame.
It looks like Might of Volcrosa, one of the pickups for Miro Popov there, and if you're looking for a pump spell, there are a few that do as much as Might of Volcrosa does. +4/+4, a big difference there. Second only to the biggest of all of the pump spells available to Infect. That one being, of course, Become Immense.
And Hayne just decided to tap out this turn, not afraid of the 1 point of Infect coming over. It's really unlikely to be killed the turn after an Infect creature came down. And there's no Noble Hierarch yet, so Miro would need at least 3 cards to make this work.
So it looks like Popov is looking to get in some Infect damage now while he can. Five points of Infect coming through here because Might of Volcrosa getting cast during the main phase for +4/+4. You can see the little 5p underneath the life totals there, that indicating that 5 of the 10 poison required to win the game already sent out by Miro Popov here.
Hayne doesn't have a super explosive draw. He doesn't have the pump that he would want. But he doesn't need to, because he can use his Vines of Vastwood to survive the next turn and then hopefully raise his opponent.
Now explain to us how that Vines of Vastwood play works, because it is a little bit counterintuitive when you first look at these deck lists.
Yes. So the general modes on Vines of Vastwood are to save your creature from a spell, or to save it and give it +4/+4. That's when you pay the kicker cost. However, it doesn't give your creature hexproof. What it does is it prevents it from being targeted. It protects it from being targeted by your opponent. So because you are allowed to target opponent's creatures, you can actually use it as a very situational counterspell.
And that's likely what we're going to see here. Effectively, Popov knows that one resolve pump spell on his Blighted Agent will be enough to win the game. Attacks in. Looks like a very disciplined attack from him there. Just went in for the 1 point of poison.
Interesting. 2 cards in his graveyard, I believe.
Yes.
So he didn't. He wasn't able to cast that Becoming Minds. Otherwise, he would have been able to just win on the spot. And probably not feeling safe enough to go for the Vines of Vastwood.
Well, his Blossoming Defense from Alexander Hain. Already 2 points of Infect on Miro Popov. And Hain has the advantage of a few more creatures. So each of his creatures potentially getting in for a bit more. And we get to see that Vines of Vastwood play on the other side. Responded to by Vines of Vastwood, though. That's a big play from Alexander Hain. He's going to have a lot of damage coming through here.
Yeah, it's actually a 7/7, so that's 10 unblockable Infect damage.
And there's the handshake from Miro Popov. Alexander Hain, the team captain for Canada. He's been on the team before. This is his second time as national champion for Canada. He's also been on the team as a teammate of the rest of the Canadian team. We're going to get a chance to jump back to one of our other matches, though. We're going to get a look in on Jacob Wilson against Ivo Neskovic. We saw Abzan versus Dredge. Dredge picking up the first game, and Neskovic, you see him there. We think that he's got a little bit of an edge in this matchup because we've got one kind of fair deck, one kind of unfair deck, and the answers available to Jacob Wilson not quite matching up so well against this very, very potent machine on Neskovic's side of the board.
Yes, and what we've seen a few times already is that the Dredge deck has to mulligan quite aggressively, and the additional discard from the Abzan deck can really destroy most of the early game plan that the Dredge deck has.
So a 5-card hand here being looked at from Inquisition of Kozilek, and Faithless losing the card to take. Still a Cathartic Reunion in hand, but Jacob Wilson able to at least get some positive interaction going on early doors.
Yes, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him go immediately for the Cathartic Reunion as well, leaving Evo with, I want to call it 0 cards, 0 meaningful cards. Only if he finds another land, he will be able to flashback Faithless Looting, and even then, his Dredge draw will be extremely slow.
Now, looking at Jacob Wilson's sideboard, he did have the potential to start with a turn 0 Leyline of the Void. That is a potent play, but it's not necessarily one that is always worth it. We saw in the match with the USA, they were trying to, against France, use Leyline of the Void to get there, but you can't mulligan down too far for it because at some point they can just cast creatures and attack you.
Absolutely, but bringing in 4 of them is very advisable. Your matchup against Dredge is just so bad in game 1, and if they get to do what they want to do, you just don't really have much of a chance.
So we can see Wilson's hand there. Plenty to be doing with his mana. 2 copies of Lingering Souls that can get cast and then flashback. Tireless Tracker, another discard spell in Inquisition of Kozilek, and a removal spell that we know actually is potent against Dredge in Path to Exile, removing a creature entirely from the game rather than simply sending it back to the graveyard, from which it's not going to hang around very long. Tireless Tracker coming down, a nice way of generating a bit of card advantage for the Abzan deck that trades 1 for 1 quite a bit in the early game.
Evo with a terrible draw of Narcomoeba.
If Jacob Wilson can find a 4th land, he does now have a Leyline of the Void. Some decks struggle to actually cast it, but Abzan, typically the sort of deck that can actually put the enchantment into play for its mana cost. There you can see it, and it does mean that your opponent, any future cards that go to the graveyard get exiled. It's not quite the same as Rest in Peace. It doesn't deal with what's already in the graveyard, but still fairly potent, at least on this board.
The other difference to Rest in Peace is that it doesn't exile your own graveyard, so it doesn't affect your own graveyard, which can be relevant if you are beating down with Tarmogoyf.
Or indeed, I suppose, if you're looking at casting Lingering Souls again and again and again. So we can see Canada having a bit of a conference here about what to do. What do you think that they're considering here?
They are lacking on land, so there are really not that many options. I think they were already planning ahead on how to further develop this game, because this turn there was really no option rather than except for casting a Lingering Souls.
So a couple of spirits coming into play. We'll find some spirit tokens for them soon enough. But 1/1 flyers, they're able to block everything, including Narcomoebas. Not too many flying creatures from Dredge, but equally able to attack over quite a lot of what the Dredge deck has going on. Abzan, typically a deck that kind of wins by inches rather than miles. It gradually accumulates damage over a number of turns. A hit for 4 here coming in. I have 5, sorry, coming in. Ivo Neskovic dropping to 12. And Tarmogoyf comes down, and Tarmogoyf does leave mana up so that path to exile is still an option available to Jacob Wilson. And the die at the top of your screen there just indicating only 2 card types in the graveyard right now, sorcery and land.
Yeah, it could become more if Evo uses this turn to flashback Faithless Looting.
We've seen it time and again, this Dredge deck suddenly exploding in terms of what it's got going on, and Neskovic needs that kind of an explosion right now.
The important part here is that you don't just explode out of nowhere. You need to first get that Dredge card into your graveyard, and then you need to start dredging. The only card that is really good at that is, of course, the Cathartic Reunion, which Jacob smartly dealt with the Thoughtseize.
So right now, in terms of the damage that Jacob Wilson represents, he has a Shambling Vent in play. So if he drew another land, he can attack with the Vent plus the creatures he has on the board for 2, 4, 7, 9 damage. Now, if there is a big Dredge from Neskovic here, it is possible that he could put himself in a position where he's simply going to be dead on the board.
Let's keep the game going, guys.
So Stinkweed Imp the play. Sometimes the secret mode that's forgotten about, you can simply cast Stinkweed Imp, and it has kind of old school death touch. If it deals combat damage to a creature, that creature does get destroyed, which means that it's kind of like a Doomblade sat on the board for something.
Now Jacob has a real decision to make whether to use Path to Exile on that Stinkweed Imp. This will push through a lot of damage. He will keep his most valuable creatures around, and the Stinkweed Imp is exiled, so there's no dredging that's going to start.
We can see both Alexander Hayne, who's finished his match, and the coach for these rounds, Felix Shea, both giving advice to Wilson. Wilson, of course, no slouch in Modern anyway. He has made the finals of a Modern Pro Tour in the past. The Path to Exile does come down, and a 4th land for Ivo Neskovic, not really the most important thing for him. He'd probably much rather have just kept that Stinkweed Imp around. Clue coming along with a land for Jacob Wilson here.
Yes, and one thing that I'm very interested in is if Jacob decides to cast that Black Leyline, it would lock up or almost lock up the victory in this game. On the other hand, it gives Evo very valuable information for the game 3 that they would have to play. So the Canadians will be thinking about the fact whether it's more important to lock up this game or more important to leave Evo in the dark as to what their sideboard cards are.
A luxurious position to be in, to at least have the option of taking that line.
Absolutely, and the most dangerous draw on Evo's side of the board is the Cathartic Reunion, because the Faithless Looting is not going to get it done.
I believe that Tarmogoyf actually a 3/4 now as Path to Exile now also in the graveyard. And the clue gets cracked such that Tireless Tracker gets a little bit larger.
It's already 9 points of damage.
Wilson not electing to crack another clue because he has a better use for that 2 mana. He's got a Lingering Souls in the graveyard. And Neskovic picks up his cards. He realizes that he's not going to be able to pull out of this one. And Wilson is able to win without showing off the Leyline of the Void. Now, thinking about the sideboarding options for Dredge, most of the things that stop a dredge deck tend to be either artifacts or enchantments, so probably a fairly marginal bit of extra information saved by Canada by not showing off the ley line of void, but it certainly doesn't hurt. We're going to get a chance to jump across and see the other match that we've not had a chance to look at thus far. There's Brian Su playing Titan Shift. He is up against Martin Nanek. Nanek was on the team that last year finished in the top 32 for Macedonia, and already a game up with...
I got it.
Already a game up with Abzan against Titan Shift. Titan Shift starting off with a Search for Tomorrow. A nice beginning for the deck that wants to get a lot of lands into play.
Oh, no. Yeah.
By the looks of things, he is on a mulligan and a quick Inquisition of Kozilek taking that Secure Tribe Elder. Just Primeval Titan left in hand alongside some lands. Not a great start for Titan Shift.
No, absolutely. And Martin has a lot of tools to stop Sue from actually resolving that Titan. More discard spells or a Liliana, for example. This Abzan list looks a lot more aggressive than what I expected. Let me see if I can find the deck list. 3 Anafenza, the foremost in the main deck, is the biggest change. Also 2 Siege Rhinos, 3 Smuggler's Copter, and then Gideons and Fulminator Mages in the sideboard. So this is Abzan aggro.
Yeah, I mean, when we use the term Abzan, all it really denotes is color, but typically we have an expectation of what an Abzan list might look like, and that's probably more similar to the sort of list that we see from Jacob Wilson. This is trying to beat down. It has some disruption, like that Inquisition of Kozilek that we saw played just a turn or so ago, but it is able to beat down.
Yes, what it doesn't have is Grimflayer, but of course Anafenza provides extra value against decks like Dredge.
Yeah, Dredge is a deck that really wants to make sure that cards are going to graveyard appropriately, and Anafenza, well, she definitely messes with that plan. And a 2-drop coming down. There's a Tarmogoyf for Martin Nanek. Sue just has to look on. And we can see there a slightly unusual looking die. That one simply has 3/4 on it, that very clearly denoting exactly how large Tarmogoyf is. So we can keep track of things nice and easily there. Titan Shift, an interesting choice, but one that I think seems to match up fairly nicely for this unified modern format. It's got some useful cards in its main deck against a lot of the big decks in the format.
Yes, you are taking away Stomping Ground from maybe a Junt deck, but other than that, you're getting a super powerful deck that has a lot of good matchups, which, yeah, I think is just a great choice for Unified Modern.
Corso of Krufix there, the play for Brian Sue. That's going to enable him to see the top of card of his deck, sometimes get some card advantage, also get a little bit of life, and for now it even blocks that Tarmogoyf. So a big pickup for him there, and it's just going to be a matter of whether or not he can find time to get everything that he wants going. His Thoughtseize. Nanek knows that there's a Primeval Titan in hand.
Yeah, better safe than sorry.
He knows that Kalni Heart Expedition going to be the draw for Brian Sue next turn. But Primeval Titan is a source of Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, and that one of the big ways that this Titan Shift deck is able to close out games. They're just double checking to make sure that the correct size on Tarmogoyf.
Now it gets bigger.
All right, now my Tarmogoyf becomes a 4/5 because I have a Path to Exile, says Martin Nanek. He no longer knows what his opponent's going to draw, but equally he knows that he doesn't need to worry about a 2/4 on the board.
Sure. So he's slightly bigger now because he instant? Yeah. Okay.
Now, it looked for a minute there as if Martin Nanek had been missing land drop. That's not the case. It's just a matter that Brian Sue's deck able to get a lot of lands into play with almost all of the cards that it plays. Does have to take 4 though as a hit from this Tarmogoyf comes through. Draws for the turn, really needs to find something. Draws a Valakut. This not exactly where he wants to be. He needs to get a bit of velocity here, and Martin Nanik at the moment able to just keep on attacking in. Su just plays the Valakut, passes things back, and it's not even as if there are that many mountains in play yet for Brian Su, such that he can get a few points of damage in here and there by playing lands.
That's the problem. Having 2 basic forests in play means that a Valakut without a Titan or Escape Shift will not do it.
So Anafenza the Foremost comes down. Lots of abilities on this 4/4 for 3. Whenever she attacks, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on another tapped creature you control. Also, and this one's important in some matchups more than others, if a creature card be put into opponent's graveyard from anywhere, it gets exiled instead. Fantastic against Dredge. And I have to think that this variation on Abzan looks to have been a pretty good choice for Macedonia.
It's a very clear metagame choice, and I like it so far. It's playing very powerful cards, and you're gaining in some of the more important matchups of this weekend.
Well, nice top deck. I had a lot of top decks.
Well, Summoner's Pact for no mana whatsoever, able to search up a Primeval Titan, and I think we can expect to see that one getting cast immediately. You do not want to leave it lying around in hand for an Abzan deck to poach with its discard spells. And Primeval Titan very, very quickly changes the face of the board in terms of what Titan Shift can achieve. Obviously, if you put it into play with Through the Breach or similar, you're able to just immediately deal a huge amount of damage from 2 sets of triggers. But casting it's not too shabby either.
I think this is better. Sure. Yes.
Primeval Titan searching up 2 lands now. Already 2 mountains in play, 1 Valakut in play. And I guess the decision for Brian Su here is, does he think his Primeval Titan will live long enough to attack? Because that may impact on which lands he wants to pick out this turn. Gets 2 mountains. That enough for 2 Valakut triggers, which can kill off Tarmogoyf. So now we have a 6/6 staring down a 4/4, and that a good fight for Titan Shift. Brian Su there, we see him place a die on top of his deck. What that's there to do is to remind him that he did cast Summoner's Pact last turn. In his upkeep, he does need to pay for the mana for Summoner's Pact. Otherwise, he will lose the game. Martin Nanik takes the die to use as a Liliana token, but immediately Brian Su places another one there just to remind him to pay that 4 mana. Liliana killing off Primeval Titan there, a big deal. The way cleared for Anafenza. Martin Nanik still has Gideon, ally of Zendikar, and an Inquisition to work with. Brian Su, he just needs to hope that the top of his deck delivers something powerful. We can see an additional hand there helping out Martin Nanik. All of these teams, of course, have 1 player designated coach. In this case, it is Nebojsa Stamenkov.
Are you paying to it? Yes.
Nanik very much in the driver's seat here, simply needs to get a couple more attacks in, and the fact that Anafenza is a 4/4, kind of important when it comes to the lands that Brian Su has in play. If he draws a mountain, typically that's fairly good against many creatures because it means that he's able to throw a lightning bolt at them effectively. However, in this instance, that's not going to work out so well because 4 toughness enough to survive a Valakut ping. Gideon coming down here.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, Gideon makes a 2/2. We'll get the appropriate token for that.
Come on. Upkeep.
2 Planeswalkers plus Anafenza versus a lot of lands. This is looking fairly good for Macedonia.
It's Escape Shift or no? That's it.
And there's the handshake. Macedonia picks up its first match. You can see there a sort of sigh of relief from Macedonia as they escape the middle match with a fairly straightforward looking 2-0 victory. And now it's all down to this final game here. We've already seen Alexander Hayne pick up a 2-0 victory in the Infect mirror. We've already seen Martin Nanik pick up a 2-0 win over Brian Su. But that man, Jacob Wilson, he's got one win. Ivo Neskovic, also one win. It's Dredge versus Abzan to figure out which one of these teams is going to be going home and which one will be playing in the next stage of our Play in the World Magic Cup. Let's kick things off and see how we go. Leyline of the Void on turn 0 from Jacob Wilson. That's a very big deal, but look at that. Immediately, Nature's Claim taking it out. Jacob Wilson gets 4 life from that exchange, but I do not think that Ivo Neskovic minds in the slightest. Leyline of the Void, one of the big cards that can swing this matchup, and Neskovic came prepared. So now Jacob Wilson is going to have to revise his game plan a little bit. Obviously, he will have hoped that he was able to keep the Leyline of the Void in play for long enough to put a real crimp in plans for Neskovic. As things stand, Neskovic he's been held back a turn.
Yes, this was a very mana-efficient way to deal with the Leyline. Also, you did it before losing anything to its exile effect. He will be looking to stock up with Faithless Lootings and Cathartic Reunion, which we've seen over and over again, and Jacob needs to disrupt this. So the big question is, can he discard? Has he 1 or 2 discard spells for the looting, for the Cathartic Reunion? Can he put up enough pressure before the Dredge deck goes off?
We can see the entire Canadian team watching on there. Alexander Hayne with the stare as he looks at the Macedonian team that's trying to knock out his team from this tournament. Here comes the Inquisition of Kozilek, and some good targets here for Jacob Wilson. Faithless Looting and Cathartic Reunion in hand. Given that Neskovic did not play a spell to draw with on the first turn, that means that 2 spells that can draw in hand. There's a limit to how much these Canadians are able to stop what Neskovic has going on with this first discard spell. Cathartic Reunion hitting the bin. Insolent Neonate the pickup. And it looks like that's going to be the first play from Neskovic. The good thing about that, of course, you can sacrifice it to discard first, get a bit of a dredge on, and then when you cast something else, potentially dredge for even more.
But that dredge did not yield one of the dredge cards in Evo's stack.
So now comes Faithless Looting. Also does not pick up any dredges, but at least means that the Life from the Loam in hand for Ivo Neskovic gets to go back to the graveyard once more.
Yeah, Ivo could dredge that back again, hopefully finding Stinkweed Imp or Golgari Gravetroll, and then he has the flashback of Faithless Looting available. He's also now immune to discard effects.
So looking at Wilson's hand, 2 copies of Path to Exile. We know that that's good against this dredge deck. Grimflayer is a pretty sizable clock. Lingering Souls and another Inquisition of Kozilek. That's what he leads off with. A swing and a miss for Jacob Wilson. Now, how's he going to feel about that? Obviously, you would much rather hit something, but at least you know that all your opponent has is lands in hand.
No, that's actually great. You're happy either way. If he had shown you a land and a Cathartic Reunion, you would be thrilled to discard the Cathartic Reunion. So 2 lands is almost the same. But being stuck on 1 land, on the other hand, is a big deal.
So this flashback Faithless Looting only gets 1 dredge in, but Nakamiwa coming off that dredge, and Prized Amalgam and Life from the Loam, the discard here. So Dredge starting to get something going, and it looks like Jacob Wilson kept this hand partly on the strength of that Leyline of the Void, and we're going to see how well it's able to deliver without it in play. Does draw the land this turn. That a very, very big pickup for him. I think that with just the 1 land that did not even produce white mana, he would have been in a huge amount of trouble. As things stand, still has to face down both Prized Amalgam and a Narcomoeba on this 3rd turn.
No, but the dredge deck has not really gone off in a meaningful way. There's has not been big dredging going on. So Jacob actually has the chance to turn this around. He can deal with the priced amalgam. He can deploy Grim Flayer or Tarmogoyf. I really like the idea of Grim Flayer to take over the game, but then you really need to cast that extra instant, that fourth card type for Delirium.
So Verdant Catacomb, a big pickup because it lets him find Temple Garden, white mana online, and that means that there's the potential for a Path to Exile here. Let's see what he goes with. Looks like he's kicking things off with a Tarmogoyf. That, of course, big enough to block Prized Amalgam quite happily on this board. Against Dredge, often many card types in the graveyard. Looks like at the moment there are 4.
Jacob already offered 3 of them, and Evo adds creature to the... Oh, actually he adds creature and instant. So
5 in total.
Yeah, the enchantment we don't often see in this matchup, but Leyline of the Void, of course, being one.
Another relatively low-impact dredge from Ivo Neskovic. Insolent Neonate alongside a couple of lands going to the graveyard as Life from the Loam comes back.
Bit of a debate going on here, whether to cast Life from the Loam or to just flashback Faithless Looting.
The die at the top of our screen here just confirming the size of that Tarmogoyf. Looks like we are going to see Life from the Loam get cast here. Getting back lands, not awful. Getting a dredge card into the graveyard, pretty great.
Yeah, but still a rather slow approach to this game. Telling Jacob that things are not about to explode immediately. I like what you mentioned about the conflagrates just being fueled by Life from the Loam. So that is always on a dredge player's mind as well. Just having excess cards means more value as the game goes on.
Yeah, I mean, these kind of set up plays for a later turn rather than your big payoff for the deck, but sometimes that's all you need. Lots of lands in hand now for Neskovic. Lots of spells in hand for Jacob Wilson. Let's see how he's able to deploy them in order to try and push Canada through to stage 2 here on Saturday at the World Magic Cup. Alexander Hayne and Felix Shea there, both whispering in the ear of Jacob Wilson. Meanwhile, Ivo Neskovic has plenty of help on his side too. And as we get to these last games in team formats, you do tend to see that the pace of play slows down a little bit. You have a lot of separate heads in the game, if you will. And that means that, in principle, things ought to be harder to miss, though perhaps it's a little bit harder to focus.
And Jacob, who's still restricted on mana, has again a difficult decision, simply because there are still so many options with Path to Exile, Grim Flayer, all being viable options.
Meanwhile, if we look at the hand on the other side of things, a very straightforward hand from Ivo Neskovic. He's got a lot of lands.
He got all of them back with the Life from the Loams, so no surprises there.
So Grimflare the play from Jacob Wilson. Not quite at Delirium yet.
No Stinkweed Imp and no Golgari Gravetroll in all these cards. Neskovic has been delaying casting his Faithless Looting because he knows how important it is to have one really big dredge. But he has just been unable to find his big dredgers.
I mean, at least he now has Prized Amalgam and a Bloodghast in the graveyard, so simply playing a land gets him quite a bit of value here. But finally does pull the trigger on flashing back Faithless Looting. This Life from the Loam hitting a dredger would be very important. Well, Lightning Axe, Prized Amalgam, and Narcomoeba going to the graveyard as Life from the Loam comes back. Gets to discard another copy of Prized Amalgam, so there will be a lot of power coming onto the board at the end of this turn. All 4 Prized Amalgams in play once those triggers resolve in the end step. Narcomoeba coming into play simply from having been milled.
Yeah, and this is huge for the Dredge deck. Without finding a Grave Troll, it's still managed to find all 4 Amalgams and return them. One of the cards to return them is even a Bloodghast, which will come back again and again.
And it looks like Neskovic contemplating playing a fetch land here, meaning that even if it works out that his Bloodghast gets killed off, he can put it into play again at instant speed simply by fetching up a land. Prized Amalgam has no fear in attacking here.
And that's of course because Grimflayer is still a 2/2.
It seems unlikely that's going to last too long. But for now, Neskovic will get in damage where he can. Jacob Wilson takes his hit. Both players on 13 life, but at the end of this turn, there will be a colossal amount of power in play for Ivo Neskovic. Even though there are Path to Exiles available to Jacob Wilson here, it seems like he's suddenly got a bit of a battle on his hands.
The good thing for Jacob is that he has 2 blockers for the Amalgams if he wants them. If he just holds back, Ivo is actually losing quite a bit of value by attacking into Jacob's blockers. Even though Prized Amalgam's strength is returning from the graveyard.
Now, of course, Team Canada, a huge amount of experience on the Pro Tour. Jacob Wilson and Alexander Hayne have been regulars on the Pro Tour for quite some time at the highest level. So the fact that this is an elimination match for them, I'm guessing that they're going to be a little bit more used to that kind of pressure than anyone on Team Macedonia is. However, that composure will be important because Macedonia are the ones that are really presenting threats here.
And Macedonia has been playing very neatly, very tightly so far.
I'm at 13, you're at 12. Yes.
And actually, in terms of World Magic Cup successes recently, they've had a slightly better run of it than Canada. Canada have had a couple of years where they've not quite been able to string things together at the World Magic Cup in quite the same way that many pundits might have expected.
This game is incredibly close. Wilson drew a Zealous Persecution, and with both players on 13 life, he wasn't too far off from actually presenting lethal himself. At the same time, he will also have an amazing trick if he wants to just punish Ivo for being too aggressive.
So a little bit of thought here on both sides as to how to play out these turns.
What the Dredge deck of course wants to do is to find another Narcomoeba or another Bloodghast to make sure that the Prized Amalgams can just attack into those blockers. If that's not guaranteed though, an attack with everything could leave Ivo very vulnerable.
So here comes Grimflayer. For those of you in Canada who are up early enough to be able to watch this, I'm sure this is edge of your seat stuff. Canada have to win this game if they're going to continue in this competition. Otherwise, they'll be knocked out for Macedonia. And Canada have struggled in the World Magic Cup thus far. Just one day two in the history of the tournament. Path to Exile dealing with one of those copies of Prized Amalgam. and that putting the 4th card type in the graveyard such that Grimflayer swinging in for a good size of damage here.
Jacob gets to choose which card he wants to keep on top, what he wants to draw.
Looks like there's at least one land there, which is pretty important because while Ivo Neskovic has been doing all sorts of tricks with his lands between putting them into play and getting them back with life from the loam, Jacob Wilson has had to forlornly look on with just a couple of lands to work with. He kept a hand with Leyline of the Void, hoping that that would be good enough. The Leyline did almost nothing, though the 4 life at this point may have bought him an extra turn. A Conflagrate going to the graveyard there. We've been talking about how having lots of cards in hand for Dredge a big deal, and with Conflagrate in the graveyard we find out why. This could be pivotal in terms of the shape of this game and the fate of both Canada and Macedonia in this tournament.
I think this is the nail in the coffin, and Jacob knows it. He's going to take so much damage that even the bad guys that just came into play will have haste, because he's going to 10 or less. Is Macedonia doing this to Canada?
Canada knew that they had to come into this matchup and put it together. This is the last game in their series. They already had a quick win from Alexander Hayne with Infect. They dropped their match with Titan Shift, and Dredge may just do it here for Ivo Neskovic. Big swings coming through following that Conflagrate, and that enough to end it. And look, big cheers there from the Macedonian team. Very happy with their performance. They will advance to stage 2, but commiserations to Canada. It has been a tough tournament for them. Once more, Canada out of the World Magic Cup before the final stages. The best that they've ever been able to achieve was a single day 2. They got to the day 2 again for this tournament, but massive smiles there for Macedonia. They had a good finish last year, and they're looking to make it a great finish this year at the World Magic Cup. Fantastic stuff from them. Well, that was some exciting Magic, Simon Gertzen. I love watching all of the different angles of attack that the Dredge deck has. Even when you write it off as having a kind of mediocre draw, it's not putting 10, 15 power into play on the first couple of turns. It's a very sort of steady deck that always threatens to do something big at every stage in the game.
Absolutely, and I've also seen it win with only Stinkweed Imps and hard-casted Golgari Grave Trolls. It's all possible.
Lovely stuff. That the end of our match on the feature match area, but there were 7 other knockout matches going on around the room. Let's head across to the news desk with Rich and find out exactly what's happened in them.
Welcome back to the news desk. Rich Hagan here with the big video wall behind me. Let's walk you through the results from that elimination round. Here we go with Pool A. That's where we're going to start off. And let's point you to our advancing. It's Belgium and Bulgaria, the teams that had byes to come into the day. They have survived the cull from stage 1. That's because Belgium have eliminated Portugal. Marcio Carvalho, he was one of 3 national team captains who won the Team Grand Prix last weekend. That was Luis Salvato for Argentina, Javier Dominguez of Spain, Marcio Carvalho of Portugal. Only Javier Dominguez of last week's champions remains in this tournament, trying to go back to back, because Spain are still going. But in Group A, Belgium against Bulgaria are through. Congratulations to them. Let's go to Pool B for you. And here we see Ukraine are through. They had a bye this morning. But the 47 seed, I mentioned Javier Dominguez, the captain of Spain. He advances because Spain eliminated Austria in this round of play. So Spain go through. Austria, Oliver Polak, Rotman, Valentin Mackel with his half-dozen Grand Prix top 8s, they are done. So goodbye to Austria, well done, and congratulations to Spain. They advance with Ukraine. Pool C is up next. The top 2 advance. It's Germany and Italy. They had byes coming in. Italy were the first through. They actually beat Germany. And in the knockout round, we've just seen Germany beat Sweden. So that means Jo Larsson and Per Nyström, Sweden are done at this top 32 stage. Germany advance and must be one of the favourites as we head in to the top 16. On to Pool D then, if we can. And Australia doing fantastic work. They were the ones who got to 2-0, defeating Canada in the last round. That set up the match you've just seen. Canada eliminated by Macedonia. What a famous upset that is. Great job by Macedonia. You saw what it meant to them. Fantastic stuff. There'll be other days for great players like Alexander Hayne and Jacob Wilson. But for now, Macedonia advances alongside Australia. David Mines and the team, Gary Lau on that team. They advance to the round of 16 coming up this afternoon. On we go. Pool E. Let's see what happened here. Well, the top 2 were Dominican Republic and Greece. Greece went 2-0. Fantastic job by them. That set up the win and in for Dominican Republic against South Korea. It was the Dominican Republic who advanced. But Greece, they've had a round off, and they are feeling really good about their chances of getting back to the final, which they did in 2014. They're waiting out on the floor with our own Brian David Marshall.
Thanks, Rich. I'm here with Team Greece and our old friend, Bill Chronopoulos.
Hello.
Tell me about this team. Tell us who you have here with you this year.
This year, our team is very good. Right to my left, it's Petrogiotis, otherwise known as the Titan in Greece. One of the best Greek players. Then is Nikos Kaponis, the first guy who qualified for this year's team. And he's a very good friend of mine, first time in his pro scene, but still very good and an experienced player. And then everybody knows Panos Papadopoulos. He's third time member of the Greek team in the World Magic Cup. Every year he qualifies easily and every year he fails in the tournament easily. But we are here to carry him. So that.
So 2 years ago, you make the finals of the World Magic Cup. What was that like at home when you went back? What was the reaction within the Greek Magic community to your success at that tournament?
Everybody was really happy. They were congratulating us all the time. They didn't believe it at first, and of course, the way we lost in the final was what they couldn't believe, actually. But yeah, everybody was very happy about our performance, and yeah, we took Magic in Greece to the next level.
We just saw another Greek player make the top 8 of a Pro Tour at the last Pro Tour. Makis Moustakis. Am I right?
It's Makis Matsoukas.
Matsoukas, I'm sorry.
Very good friend of mine, and I want to congratulate him through here as well. He really deserved it. He's a very solid player, and you will see much more from him in the near future.
Now, he's threatening your perpetual captainship of the Greek national team here.
Well, as I told you before, I'm not chasing down Magis, I'm chasing down World Magic qualifier seat for next year. So that will be easier.
You're expecting that you're not going to be able to top his points already?
No, no way.
Okay, so Denmark, the team that beat you last time, they're gone. You're still standing, just 2 wins away from returning to the... That would mean for you and the team to get back to playing on Sunday at the World Magic Cup.
Of course, I would be really happy because all my teammates would qualify for Pro Tour, but then we'll get a chance to get what we lost 2 years ago, and that's what we're rooting for, just the first place, nothing else. And we're taking each game, each match one by one, but our goal is to do what we didn't do 2 years ago.
All right, there you have it, Rich. First place is what they're here for. It's Team Greece.
Thanks very much, BDM. Team Greece there, Bill Chronopoulos and the crew trying to get back to a World Championship final in team play. But a long way to go before that. Back to the big board. Pool F we've got to. Iceland and Hong Kong were the overnight leaders. But as you can see, they both bit the dust. Iceland losing to Panama, losing to Hong Kong. Hong Kong themselves lost to Belarus, and in the elimination match, they lost to Panama. Phenomenal job by Panama. This is Saul Alvarado. He used to play at the Old Style Worlds. He was the one representative from Panama almost every year. You knew he was going to be at Worlds. Made a top 50 here and there, top 64, maybe an odd top 32. He has literally double figures of appearances at World Championships through the history of the game. Then the World Magic Cup comes along. He, of course, is the captain time after time. He's a standout player in his country. But Panama have never made day 2. So, top 48 into day 2 this morning, top 32. And now, congratulations to them. They've gone green. Panama advances to the top 16. A tremendous story for a tiny Magic nation, a small but passionate Magic community. Great job by them. Let's go to Pool G for you. And Finland and Wales were the overnight leaders in this group. But Wales, well, they suffered this morning. Lost to England, lost to Lithuania. That was the 2 losses that took Wales out of contention. And as you can see, Finland advanced courtesy of their 2 victories over Lithuania and England. And then in the decider, it was Lithuania, England, Lithuania. Godenis Vidugiris, the very experienced, he's a Pro Tour finalist from 2012. Pro Tour Abzan restored. He leads the Lithuanian team into the top 16. England go home, but good job, boys. Well done. So on we go to Pool H, the last of our groups. Let's see where we were. Well, USA, here they go. They came in with the bye overnight, and they've done it again. Win, win. Didn't have to play last time. And now what was the result? Turkey, Malaysia was the matchup. Malaysia advance. So congratulations to United States and Malaysia. So we have a top 16. What we don't know is how they're going to be aligned in 4 pools this afternoon, when we will go back to modified double elimination play. So top seed will play bottom seed, the 2 middle seeds will play. Then the 1 and O's will face off to determine who's in the top 8. The 2 0-1s will play to send someone home and keep someone alive. And then there will be 4 more 1 and 1 matchups in our last round this evening, at which point we will know the identity of the top 8 for tomorrow. All of that still to come. But first, we've got a little bit of a history lesson in the company of the 2014 champions. Here come Team Denmark. We'll see you in a minute.
Okay, so my name is Simon Nielsen. I am a gold level Magic Pro, and I have some results. Like, my most impressive one was that I was part of the Danish World Magic Cup team when we won the event in 2014. Somebody might know me as the Dane Blast guy. That's at least what all the Greek players know me as.
My name is Anders Godfredsen, and I have been playing Magic for about 6 years now. And I played in the very first World Magic Cup back in 2012, where we did not do very well. So I have something to avenge.
My name is Asger Lundblad. I'm 21. I'm studying programming. I've been playing Magic for only 3 years, I think. This is my first big major event, if you're not talking GPs.
Before the World Magic Cup, I played some Pro Tours, did like reasonable one, top 25, but didn't really think that I was going to like be a professional Magic player at all.
Yes, so when we won, what was that, 2 years ago? I lost in the finals of a WMCQ. Then I got to see us win the World Magic Cup, and I was of course excited for my country, but it was a little bittersweet when I knew it could have been me there.
So for the last World Magic Cup, I qualified for a WMCQ, and that was really huge for me because this was right when Martin Miller, who is a good friend of mine and who I started to play Magic with, he started to qualify for the Pro Tours and started chaining those. So it was really big for me to get to play with him on the World Magic Cup team. That's like I hadn't played a Pro Tour yet at that point, so I just like really wanted to be with him doing these things, and I was just so motivated for that event. I spent a lot of hours in Magic Online just grinding every deck in Standard to test, because I wanted to like feel like I could live up to like the level of the other players, because I was probably not the best on that team. And we just like kept winning enough matches to go on to the next stage like all the time. It was always like a bit of a close call, but in the end we got to the finals against Greece. And we knew that the matchups were just lined up horribly. Like we had a mirror match and then just two bad matchups. It came down to a third game, and so this third game here, we are way deep into the late game, and we don't have anything left. Like we're just out of cards in play or in hand.
The opponent, the Greeks, had an Ashiok on I think 12 counters or something. We had nothing going on.
But we know that just like we had Thoughtseize their hand and just seen like it's like 7 cards, we can't beat either of them.
But we were stuck on 3 mana. But we had no pressure, no hand, nothing. So it seemed, I thought that was like 1% or something.
So we are we are really far behind. And then like at some point I just like draw Sea Tyranno and I just like slam it onto the table like very theatrically, because at this point like we're just playing for the camera.
But that was like not close to being good enough. Then we drew a Doom Blast, and I was like really close.
Which is a card that we put into the deck Thursday night before the event. We hadn't seen it the entire event. All of us have forgotten that it was even in the deck. And all of a sudden we can keep our Sea Tyranno, we can clear the board so that they have no mana again, and we can start pressuring the life total, because they're actually low life total, because we did have a bunch of Sea Tyrannos earlier.
And then we drew a Wingman Rock. Those 3 cards in the perfect order, and somehow we actually won. That was the most insane comeback I ever tried, and probably one of the most important matches I played.
All of a sudden you see Simon playing the last game, and you're thinking, as he was, that they were done, because it was a very bad matchup. And then all of a sudden, I mean, I think I like looked back, and they played the Doom Blast or Dane Blast, and all of a sudden they just won, and couldn't believe it.
It's like very exciting, just watching, hoping for the top deck, and yeah, it happened like what, twice or 3 times in a row. We won. That was fun.
It was very surreal, because we were totally like accepting that we would lose. Like I was thinking, yes, second place, it's still pretty good. I was thinking about like, oh, that's still a lot of money, and like we get to play the Pro Tour and stuff like that. And I mean, yeah, sure, we lose to Greece, but like it's not about that, is it? And yeah, it was about that. Like
you know the feeling when you play Magic. You know when you lost, and I really feel like I lost, and then just turn around, and then that doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, just like all of a sudden there was like, yeah, handshakes and trophies and trophy shots and interviews being taken, and it was just, we couldn't really believe it.
Yeah, in Denmark there was like 100 people in the airport with flags and celebrating when we got home as a surprise. We didn't even know about it. That's really awesome that the community wanted to do that.
And then last year I lost in the finals yet again to Christopher Larsen, and they top 8'd and qualified for the Pro Tour, which is obviously what we all want to do. So this year I beat Christopher Larsen in the finals. So I'm finally back, and I really need to make this count.
Like, I've always wanted to be good at some kind of game, and I would like Magic to be the thing. I'm very happy to have a chance to play with both Martin and Simon, because I think I learned a lot from them, a lot better than me. So yeah, I'm really happy to do that. learning a lot every day already. So I'm looking forward to the tournament.
Yeah, I've been in their seats, like being, felt like I was getting a bit carried by better players on the team to just kickstart my own Pro Tour experience.
It would mean very close to everything, because I mean, I have a full-time job, but I spend pretty much all of my spare time on Magic, and it's really what I want to be good at and what I want to do well in.
Welcome back to the news desk here. Congratulations to Denmark, champions in 2014. But BDM, not this time. They are gone here on day 2.
Yeah, condolences. Greece still going, though. Their opponents from the finals for that event. And we heard Bill Chronopoulos earlier say, like, he's just here to do one match better than the last time he made a deep run in this tournament.
We've been joined at the news desk by Simon Gertsen, Pro Tour champion from 2010. That means Luis Scott Vargas has headed across town to the commentary booth, so he'll be with you with his play-by-play colour commentary insight through the last rounds here on day 2. But Simon, how was your morning? 4 rounds. I mean, action-packed stuff down in the booth.
Very intense. One of the most intense Saturdays I can remember from coverage because of all these elimination matches going on. Every match mattered, every individual match mattered. I don't know how many Infect and Dredge decks I've seen duking it out, a bunch of other decks in there, and always really, really close games that ultimately tip the scales in the favor of one team or the other.
I get to hear the commentary in my ear throughout the day, and one thing I've noticed is a real feature of this tournament, in the modern rounds particularly, is it looks like games swing a great deal. You can hear either you or Luis or Marshall or Gabby or Tim saying, this is a great start for player A. They're well ahead here. It looks like player B is in real trouble. And then 2 turns later, player B's done a whole load of really crazy stuff, and suddenly it's right back in the balance.
Yeah, and especially with Dredge, you never know what's going to happen. From one turn to the other, the battlefield just changes by so much. Infect can create wins out of nowhere. It's really, really interesting how the players prepared for this tournament, which decks they chose, but also which sideboards they built to prepare for this metagame.
We were talking with Dr. Frank Carsten over the weekend, asking whether there was a problem with Affinity, that there was an issue that you couldn't find enough hate cards for it to spread across 3 decks. The consensus was what?
There are enough cards, but do you have enough sideboard slots? Because Affinity will ultimately not be that much of that large a part of the metagame. So you also need those Leyline of the Voids, you need those Tormod script, you need maybe more discard spells. 15 cards is not enough.
Even if every single team played Affinity, you're still only 1 in 3 to play against it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are now heading in to the last 16. We get to draw breath a little because in this first round of pool play stage 2, no one gets eliminated. What you play for in this first round is if you win, you then get to play for the top 8 twice. If you lose, you're playing against elimination twice. So this is the setup round coming right up. We do have the top 16 teams now and their pools. So why don't we take a look? We don't know what they are either yet, so you're seeing them just as soon as we are. Why don't we take a look at what is going to become your new Pool A here at the World Magic Cup. So into stage 2, 4 teams left in this group, as there are in every group. It's your overall 1 seed, the 8, the 9, the 16. And BDM, that means Belgium, Ukraine, Dominican Republic, and Spain.
Yeah, and I could tell you, talking to Cal Lopez from the Dominican Republic team, there are a lot of people who don't know very much about Magic at home who are very invested in their team's success at this tournament. It really gives you an idea of what's at stake here in terms of national pride. Cal Lopez says, look, my mother and I have always had a contentious relationship about Magic. As I was growing up and I wanted to go to tournaments and I wanted to be away, or I'm going to drive 12 hours to Grand Prix Toronto, and she's never really understood anything. But, yesterday she called, she's like, how are you guys doing? Did you make day 2? What's happening? And his whole family and all his friends. So big leg of this tournament coming up for the Dominican Republic. And you know what? Every time you see one of these pools, if you're rooting for a team there, well, they're 50% to make it. 2 teams out of every one of these pools we're going to look at are going to advance to our top 8. So you're very close if you're rooting for Belgium, Ukraine, the Dominican Republic, or Spain here.
And I think for the casually invested people at home, it is much easier to understand that Canada versus Hungary is a thing.
You need to take that back, because the Dominican fans are not casually invested in anything.
Okay, sure. But around the world, there are certainly, the mums and dads who don't necessarily understand what round 14 of Swiss means. But we understand that when it's England against Wales was a thing last round. We all understand. We don't even know who all the players are necessarily. Not personally, but we know that England against Wales, well, we do that in rugby and we do that in soccer, and we don't do that in cricket. But there we are. That's Pool A. Let's go to Pool B. Who are in Pool B going to do battle? It is Simon Gertsen's Germany, though not actually captained by on this occasion. It's Patrick Dickman's Germany. Andrea Mengucci's Italy, Christian Ivanov's Bulgaria, and Saul Alvarado's Panama. BDM, I'm just talking about what a great performance Panama is, but Simon, I want to ask you, how is Germany at expectation roundabout now, above expectations, or did you look at the team and go, these are very good?
I knew they were good. It's just that Patrick Dickmann, Marc Tobias, you don't really hear these names and think, wow, that's two superstars. But when you realize what this tournament is, it's a constructed team tournament. You have two of the brightest minds in Germany when it comes to these formats. Patrick Dickmann, I think, is probably the best affinity player or the most experienced affinity player that I know. And I'm just happy they're not facing off against Italy this round.
Not this round, no. They will play Panama. The two middle teams will face off. So Italy will face Bulgaria, but we could have another Germany-Italy collision course. Let's move on to Pool C for you. Who is in Pool C? That's Pool B, Germany, Italy, and here's Pool C. BDM, what do you reckon for the United States? Your potential opponents, Australia and Belarus. You will begin by facing Macedonia, who've just knocked out Canada.
So I have a funny story. Macedonia needed to win that last round of the previous round of pool play to advance to this stage. And Martin Nanik was a little nervous about a feature match. He'd gotten eliminated in a feature match last year, and he's like, but Ivo, who we saw play Jacob Wilson, Ivo Neskovic, was like, no, I want the feature match. I want to kick some pro player butt. And he was just really psyched to play the best player he could possibly play and defeat them on camera. And that's exactly what he did. He beat Jacob Wilson.
Do you know who else said exactly that to me? That man at lunchtime in his Pro Tour Top 8 win. He
6 years ago.
I want Luis Scott Vargas on the other side of the table, because when I win the Pro Tour, I want it to be clear that I got past the best that was on offer. And here you are, Pro Tour champion.
I'm just wondering if Macedonia can keep this up.
Well,
because the next hurdle is right in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's going to be the United States.
Yeah, but remember, it's not elimination at this point. You win, you then get to play a maximum of 2 matches to make it in. If you're at 0-1, you're then into elimination mode, and you have to win twice to reach the top 8. So that's A, B, and C. It must be time for Pool D. Here are the last 4 teams still standing in the World Magic Cup 2016. It is Finland, Greece, Malaysia, and Lithuania. And BDM, Gaudenis Vidigiris has got the Lithuanian train running. They have not had a great record in this tournament over 4 years, but here they are, only 2 wins away from the top 8.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like at the start of the tournament, we always go, and don't discount Lithuania. They've got Gaudenis Vidigiris captaining the team, but this is the year where he's really followed through on that promise. But also, the team that's really caught my eye here is Greece. Another very passionate Magic country, really looking for more big finishes and building more excitement within the Greek Magic community. And I'm really excited to see them on the brink of returning to the top 8. I know that Bill, he's had that taste in his mouth. He's like, even in the interview we just did, he's like, and the way that we lost.
Right. It matters. It isn't just about the 0. It's the Dane Blast. It hurts. Of course it does. Drama always has the 2 sides to it. Now, 16 teams left. If we were looking for a top 4, like there are 4 to me, standout teams here right now. One is Germany, which I did not expect, Simon, in all honesty, because I know that Mark Tobias is good, but I thought that maybe they were half a player shy, if you like. But the three teams that look great on paper and are delivering, Belgium with the two Viren brothers, plus Jerome Baston and Branko Neyrink. You have Italy with Andrea Mangucci, Alessandro Portara, Alessandro Casamenti and Mattia Rizzi with his 3GP top 8s. And Team USA, BDM are looking awful good right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming into this tournament, I thought Kevin Jones, I should say. Matt Jones is someone else entirely. I thought Kevin Jones could be a real secret weapon for them. Not someone with a ton of pro experience, but somebody who has a ton of modern experience and is a tremendous player.
All right, well, I can tell you that pool play is ready to get going once again. We are going to take you to Pool A, and the Belgian team we've just mentioned, they are up against the last national champion winner from last weekend at GP Rotterdam. That's Javier Dominguez, and that means it's Belgium versus Spain right now.